Everybody's been watching Shedeur Sanders, but almost nobody realizes what's actually changing behind the scenes. Because while fans are waiting for highlights, big plays, and viral moments, Shedeur has gone quiet. No flashy workout clips, no constant posting, no noise, and that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. Behind the scenes, he's been rebuilding everything: his mindset, his habits, even the way he deals with pressure and the media. And in a recent sit-down with his brother, he gave a rare, unfiltered look into what's really going on in his life right now, from the loneliness of being in Cleveland, to how people constantly twist his actions, to the lessons he's learning as he steps fully into his own. But here's the part that should have everyone paying attention. This isn't the same Shedeur from high school or even college. This is someone who knows exactly what's coming next and is moving differently because of it. What's really catching people off guard right now isn't what Shedeur Sanders is doing, it's what he's not doing. Because in today's game, especially with young stars, everything is documented. Workouts, late-night gym sessions, throwing drills, motivational speeches, it's all over social media. That's how players build hype. That's how they stay relevant. But Shedeur, he's gone the opposite direction. There's been almost nothing. No daily training clips, no over-the-top grind mode posts, no constant reminders that he's working. And at first glance, some people might think that's a problem. They might assume he's not putting in the same level of work. But if you've been paying attention to his journey, you know that couldn't be further from the truth. This is intentional. See, Shedeur has reached a point where he understands something most young players don't. Not everything needs to be shown. In fact, sometimes the most dangerous version of a player is the one nobody can track, the one building in silence. And based on everything he's been saying recently, that's exactly where his focus is right now. He talked about spending time reflecting, resetting mentally, and becoming more intentional with how he moves every single day. Not just physically, but mentally. That's a different level of preparation. That's not just training your body, that's sharpening your mind for what's coming. Because he knows this next season isn't just another year. It's a statement year. And when a player starts moving like this, cutting distractions, staying low-key, locking in behind the scenes, it usually means one thing: they're preparing for something bigger than people expect. There's also another layer to this that most people are missing. When you stop showing everything, you also stop giving people access. Less content means fewer chances for criticism, fewer chances for narratives to form, fewer opportunities for people to twist what you're doing. And as we'll see later, that's something Shedeur is becoming very aware of. So this silence, it's not absence. It's strategy. And if that's the case, then the version of Shedeur Sanders that shows up next season might be very different from the one people think they're getting. But the real shift isn't just in how he trains. It's in how he sees himself now. One of the most revealing parts of that conversation wasn't about football at all. It was about identity. Because for the first time, you can really hear it in Shedeur's voice. He doesn't see himself as the young guy anymore. He said it in a simple way, but it carried weight. He's standing 10 toes now. And that might sound like just a phrase, but what it really means is everything has changed. Back in high school, and even during parts of his college career, there was always a structure around him. Family nearby, familiar environments. A system that, whether people want to admit it or not, provided a level of comfort and protection. Not in a negative way, just in the sense that he wasn't fully on his own yet. But now, that's gone. Now he's in Cleveland, different city, different energy, different expectations. And most importantly, he's not surrounded by the same daily support system he grew up with. That hit him. You could hear it when they started talking about how everyone is now spread out, living in different places. People who used to be right next door are no longer there. That constant presence, that easy access to family, it's not the same anymore. And that forces you to grow up fast. Because when you're on your own like that, there's no buffer, no one to fall back on in the moment. Every decision, every move, every mistake, it's all on you. And instead of running from that pressure, Shedeur is leaning into it. He's starting to think differently, move differently, carry himself differently. You can tell he's becoming more aware of who he is, not just as a player, but as a man. There's more intention behind his words, more thought behind his actions. Even in a casual conversation with his brother, there's this underlying shift, like he's processing everything on a deeper level. And then there's something else that stood out. The quiet honesty. When his brother brought up how things feel different now, Shedeur didn't try to brush it off or play it cool. He acknowledged it. That alone tells you a lot about where he is mentally. Because recognizing that change, actually sitting with it, is part of growth. This isn't just about football anymore. It's about ownership. Ownership of his life, his environment, his decisions, and ultimately his future. And once a player reaches that stage, where they fully understand that everything is on them, that's when things start to shift in a serious way. But that kind of growth doesn't happen without adjustment. And what he changed next might be the most important part of all. If there's one moment in that entire conversation that really explains where Shedeur Sanders is right now, it's this. You create your reality. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it said everything. Because that one mindset shift separates players who rely on talent from those who take full control of their path. And right now, Shedeur is clearly stepping into that second category. He talked about reflecting a lot since the season ended, not just casually thinking back, but actually breaking things down, what worked, what didn't, where he could improve, and how he could move smarter going forward. That level of self-awareness is something you usually see in veterans, not someone still early in their pro journey. And the biggest change, he's becoming intentional. Intentional with his time, intentional with his energy, intentional with who and what he gives access to. Even the small moment about screen time might have sounded like a joke at first, but there's a deeper message behind it. In today's world, distractions are everywhere. Phones, social media, constant noise, it's easy to lose hours without even realizing it. But Shedeur is starting to recognize that. He mentioned trying not to be on his phone as much, being more aware of how he spends his time. And that might seem like a small adjustment, but it's actually one of the biggest shifts an athlete can make. Because time is everything at this level. And the players who learn how to control it, who cut out distractions, who stay locked in, who focus on development instead of attention, those are the ones who separate themselves fast. You can also tell he's thinking more long-term now. This isn't just about the next game or the next highlight. It's about building the best version of himself, step by step, mentally, physically, emotionally. That's a different type of focus. And when someone starts moving like that, they become harder to read, harder to predict, harder to stop. Because now it's not just about talent anymore, it's about discipline and awareness. But here, where things get even more interesting. Even as he's leveling up mentally, there's one thing he's realizing he can't fully control: how people interpret him. And that's where things start to get complicated. As much as Shedeur Sanders is locking in on his mindset, there's one thing he's starting to see very clearly, and it's something that frustrates a lot of athletes once they reach this level. The media doesn't always show who you really are. During that conversation, there was a small, almost throwaway moment where he jokingly muted the mic. Nothing serious, just brother-to-brother humor, the kind of thing that happens naturally when you're comfortable. But instead of just laughing it off, Shedeur immediately pointed out something deeper. He said moments like that can easily get taken out of context. And that right there tells you everything about what he's been dealing with behind the scenes. Because when you're in his position, every little action gets watched. Every joke, every reaction, every facial expression, it can all be clipped, reposted, and turned into a narrative within minutes. And once that narrative is out there, it's hard to control. You could hear the frustration in how he explained it. Not anger, but awareness. He understands how fast things can spiral, how quickly people can label you based on one moment that doesn't even represent who you are. He even made it clear that's not how he wants to represent himself. And that's a big deal. Because a lot of players either ignore that reality or they react emotionally to it. But Shedeur is doing something different. He's studying it, learning it, adjusting to it. He's realizing that being a quarterback, especially one with his spotlight, isn't just about performance on the field. It's about perception. It's about knowing when to speak, how to act, and how easily things can be flipped if you're not careful. And that's not something you master overnight. That's something you grow into. You can even see why earlier we talked about him moving more quietly. Less exposure means fewer chances for moments to be misinterpreted, fewer opportunities for people to create stories that don't match reality. So now it starts to make sense. The silence, the intentional moves, the controlled presence. It's all connected. He's not just preparing as a player, he's learning how to navigate everything that comes with being one. But even with all that awareness, there's still another side to his life that most people don't see. Because off the field, away from the cameras and headlines, things are a lot more personal than people realize. When people think about a young athlete stepping into a new city, especially at Shedeur Sanders' level, they usually imagine a fast life. Big nights, constant movement, always outside, always seen. But what Shedeur revealed about his life in Cleveland is actually the complete opposite. He's not out chasing attention. He's not trying to be everywhere. He's at home, and not in a boring way, in a focused way. When he was asked about his favorite places in Cleveland, his answer wasn't clubs or events. It was simple: his house. That's where he feels comfortable. That's where he locks in. That's where he spends most of his time. And that tells you a lot about where his priorities are right now. Because for a lot of players, a new city becomes a distraction. New environment, new people, new energy. It's easy to get pulled into things that take your focus away from the game. But Shedeur is doing the opposite. He's building a routine. He mentioned sticking to certain spots, keeping things consistent, not overcomplicating his lifestyle. Even when it comes to food or daily habits, he's not jumping around trying everything. He's staying grounded. That kind of structure matters more than people realize, especially when you're adjusting to a completely new chapter of your life. But here, where it gets interesting. Even though he's keeping a low profile, the city already knows who he is. He talked about going through the airport in Cleveland and getting recognized instantly. Fans showing love, calling his name, treating him like he's already that guy. And that's before anything major has even happened yet. Think about that. He hasn't fully made his mark in the league, and he's already getting that level of attention in the city. That kind of early recognition can go one of two ways. It can distract you, or it can motivate you. And based on everything we've seen so far, it's pushing him to stay even more locked in. Because now there's expectation. Now people are watching. Now there's a standard attached to his name. And instead of running toward the spotlight, he's stepping back just enough to stay in control of it. But even with that discipline, there's still something missing from this new life. Because no matter how focused you are, being on your own like that changes things. And that's where family starts to matter more than ever. For all the talk about discipline, mindset, and staying, locked in one of the most real moments in that entire conversation, had nothing to do with football at all. It was about his brother. Because underneath all the growth and independence, you can still hear something else in Shedeur's voice. And that's the adjustment to being alone more often than he's used to. When they started talking about visiting each other, it came off playful at first. Jokes, back and forth, typical brother energy. But then there was a line that stood out more than anything else. He admitted that he values spending time with his brother more now than he used to. And that's not something you just say casually. That's something you realize when life changes. Back when everything was close, same neighborhoods, same routines, always around each other, that time together probably felt normal, almost expected. But once that's gone, once everyone is in different places living different lives, you start to see it differently. You start to appreciate it. And that's exactly where Shedeur is right now. There's even a subtle hint of loneliness in how he talks about it. Not in a negative way, but in a real way. The kind that comes with growth. The kind that comes with stepping into your own life and realizing that not everyone is right there with you anymore. And instead of letting that distract him, he's using it. He's turning that feeling into motivation. Because when you don't have that constant presence around you, you either lose focus or you double down on your purpose. And for him, it's clearly the second option. You can see it in how he carries himself now, more grounded, more aware, more appreciative of the people in his circle. Even the humor between them, the jokes about football, the teasing, the stories, it all feels different when you realize there's real meaning behind it. It's not just entertainment, it's connection. And that connection matters more now than ever. Because at this level, when everything starts getting serious, when expectations rise and pressure builds, having people who truly know you, who have been there from the beginning, becomes one of the biggest anchors you can have. But here, where things take an interesting turn, that bond might not just stay personal. Because based on what was said, there's a chance it could turn into something much bigger. And this is where the conversation quietly shifted from personal to something that could actually turn into a real storyline. Because while it started off as jokes between brothers, there were moments that made people stop and think. What if this actually happens? Shedeur brought up the idea of being in Cleveland more often, even hinting at getting a spot out there. At first, it sounded casual, just talk, just a brother wanting to be around more. But in today's sports world, things like that don't go unnoticed. Fans immediately started connecting the dots. Could there be a scenario where both brothers end up in the same city again, on the same team, around the same system? Now, to be clear, nothing is confirmed. There's no official move, no deal, no announcement. But this is exactly how speculation starts. A small comment, a simple idea, and suddenly it becomes a real conversation. Because when you look at it from the outside, it's not as unrealistic as it might seem. Teams are always looking for depth. Practice squads exist for a reason. Opportunities open up all the time, especially for players with the right connections, work ethic, and upside. And let's be honest, the Sanders name carries weight. There's already attention around Shedeur in Cleveland. The fans know him. The city is watching him. So naturally, the idea of adding another familiar name into that environment, it builds intrigue instantly. You can already imagine the storyline. Two brothers, same city, same mission. That's something fans would rally behind quickly. But again, this is where it's important to separate what's real from what's being talked about. Right now, it's just that talk. Rumors, ideas, and possibilities being discussed by fans and sparked by a simple conversation. Nothing more, nothing less. Still, the fact that it's even being mentioned shows you how much attention is already surrounding Shedeur's situation. People are watching closely. every move, every word, every hint. And when that kind of spotlight is on you, even the smallest things can turn into bigger narratives. But whether that situation ever becomes reality or not, there's one thing that's already clear. Shedeur didn't just arrive in Cleveland as another player. He brought something with him. Something that's been building long before this moment, and it all traces back to where he came from. To really understand why Shedeur Sanders is moving the way he is right now, you have to look at the foundation behind it. Because this didn't just happen overnight. This is years in the making. And a huge part of that comes back to one name, Jarvis Sanders. From the outside, people see the confidence, the composure, the way Shedeur handles himself in interviews, in pressure moments, even in casual conversations like this one. But what they don't always see is how early he was exposed to all of it. The spotlight, the expectations, the criticism. That's something most players have to adjust to once they reach the league. But for Shedeur, that process started way before Cleveland, way before college, even before Jackson State. He grew up around it. And more importantly, he was taught how to navigate it. You can see it in how he talks about the media now. He doesn't sound surprised by how things get twisted. He doesn't sound overwhelmed by attention. If anything, he sounds prepared. Like he's been here before. And that's because, in a way, he has. Jarvis didn't just prepare him to be a football player. He prepared him to be a public figure. To understand that every move can be analyzed. Every moment can be turned into a headline. And that if you don't control your image, someone else will do it for you. That's a lesson a lot of players learn the hard way. But Shedeur is learning it in real time and adjusting before it becomes a problem. That's why you're seeing this more calculated version of him now. More intentional, more aware, more disciplined in how he moves, both on and off the field. And when you combine that kind of upbringing with his current mindset shift, it starts to paint a bigger picture. This isn't just a talented quarterback trying to make his mark. This is someone who's been trained, shaped, and now fully stepping into his role. And that's what makes this next phase so important. Because everything he's been building, the mental discipline, the media awareness, the quiet work ethic, it's all leading toward one thing. A moment where it all shows up at once. And if that moment hits the way he expects it to, a lot of people are going to realize they underestimated him. When you step back and look at everything happening right now, it doesn't feel loud. There's no constant headlines, no viral clips flooding your feed, no over-the-top statements trying to grab attention. And that's exactly why this moment is being overlooked. Because while the spotlight isn't fully locked onto him yet, Shedeur Sanders is quietly putting together something much bigger behind the scenes. He's not chasing hype. He's not feeding into narratives. He's learning how to control his environment, his time, and even how he's perceived, which, at this level, is just as important as what happens on the field. And that's what makes this version of him different. This isn't the same player people watch in high school. It's not even the same one from college. This is someone who understands the game beyond football now. The mental side, the media side, the discipline it takes to stay locked in when everything around you is trying to pull you off track. Even the way he's choosing to move in silence, that says a lot. Because when a player stops showing everything, it usually means they're focused on showing it when it actually counts. And that's where things get real. Because if everything he's been building, the mindset, the preparation, the awareness, translates the way it looks like it could, then this next season won't just be another step in his career. It'll be a statement. A statement that he's not just here to be talked about, but to take over. And if the league is still judging him based on what they think they know right now, they might be in for a surprise. Because the most dangerous version of a player is the one nobody fully understands yet.